Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar, Managing Cash Flow in a World of Weak Oil Prices. Before we get started today, I just wanted to say on behalf of Enverus that we all hope that you are well and safe out there. And we hope that this content will help provide you some valuable information as we navigate these challenging times. So, with that, a couple of housekeeping items before we move along. Everyone who registered for this session will receive the recording of the replay. You'll receive that in your email inbox. More than likely, it'll be tomorrow sometime. And then there's also a questions panel available in the GoToWebinar console. So as we're going through this presentation, feel free to type in your questions into that questions box, and we'll be able to follow up with you after the session. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our head of product, Tamara Roach.
Thank you, Susie, and thank you all for joining us today. As Susie mentioned, I am Tamara Roberts-Roach. I'm a director of product management at Enverus, and I'm excited to introduce you guys again to our partner FundThrough. So as we kick things off this afternoon, I just wanted to provide a quick overview of why we continue to be excited about our partnership with FundThrough. So we've worked with FundThrough for a while now, and the reason we initially selected them as a partner was actually based on kind of a few key factors. So we sought out to find a partner intentionally that was reliable and trustworthy. Obviously, as we thought about suppliers or vendors on the network, this was critical because we wanted to find a company that we felt strongly suppliers could trust. We know there are kind of shady providers and offerings out there, so we wanted to ensure we worked with a partner that was fair and consider the interests of the vendors on our network. In addition to this, it was also important that we believe suppliers were in control. And what we mean by that is that suppliers were able to access a flexible option that allowed them to choose what made sense for their company. So really giving them control over a funding option. So of course, it was also important that vendors had a positive experience, so both with the support or the people they engaged with and technology. So we sought out a partner that could work with us to create an easy-to-use and safe experience. So we reviewed feedback from users. We wanted to understand how well users enjoyed working with the FundThrough team and their technology. So after reviewing a number of candidates, we opted to move forward with FundThrough as a partner since we believe they were the right fit. So all that to say, we continue to be excited about our partnership with FundThrough, which is why I am happy to introduce you today to Andrew Stamps from FundThrough, who is going to provide you some insightful information today. So take it away, Andrew.
Thank you for that intro, Tamara, and thanks to everyone who signed up and is attending today. I'm super excited to talk with you guys, not only because I've been locked in my house for the last 6 weeks, but also because it's a really timely time to be chatting with folks in this sector about cash flow. More than ever, everyone knows that cash flow management is going to be critical to the success of businesses, and it's going to play a key role in weathering this storm. So without further ado, I'll get on to the presentation. First, I'm going to want to go over our agenda here. We'll first discuss recent price developments in the oil markets. As you guys all know, it's been a wild ride over the last couple of days. We'll dive into the factors that are pushing crude lower in the short term, as well as discussing some potential factors that could drive that oil price back up. With that said, lower prices will impact cash flow across the supply chain and can impact payment terms and cash flow at many levels. So we'll discuss ways to manage cash flow in current conditions. We'll also include some techniques and strategies to minimize the impact of the money that's leaving your books through payroll, payments, and other expenses. We'll also throw in some best practices that you can employ to ensure faster payment from clients and better ways to plan for your company's future. And then we'll wrap up with a conversation about FundThrough and Open Invoice and the product that we've developed for its suppliers. So to jump into the current market conditions, yesterday's stunning decline in crude represented a sharp decline in demand. Crude prices went negative, meaning that producers had to pay traders to take delivery at Cushing, Oklahoma. The story paints a difficult picture of today's supply and demand imbalance And the downturn came after a difficult first quarter that saw Russia and Saudi Arabia engage in a price war. The ensuing deal to cut production hasn't provided significant support as demand has slumped around the globe. In the US, crude is down, few folks are driving, airlines have cut flights by 90%, and other products in general are just seeing very weak demand. Economic growth in Asia has slumped and the world is falling into a recession. The dollar remains strong, but that adds additional pressure to the crude prices. So why should we be optimistic? Right now, we're looking for those silver linings for the producers. Many are hedged at around $50 per barrel at a time that the government is exploring unprecedented stimulus efforts. The U.S. is also approaching the peak of the coronavirus curve, which signals that we might be able to explore new ways to open the business in coming weeks. All of this, though, sets the stage for a significant cash crunch upstream, meaning that managing cash flow now will become more important than ever. So to chat a little bit more about cash flow, right now the cash crunch facing the U.S. economy is quite real. We have a lot of companies right now that have large debt problems and could face rating downgrades in the near future. We have more companies facing potential downgrades now to junk status than we did even during the financial crisis. In addition, production companies have different break-even costs. So while some producers are hedged at $50 per barrel, others are struggling to be profitable. If oil prices remain below these break-even prices for a prolonged period, certain companies will unfortunately have to shut down production. We've seen this occur across oil fields throughout the US and Canada so far. This cash crunch creates a difficult situation for folks who need to pay their suppliers. One thing that we're noticing as well is that a number of producers are extending their payment terms with their suppliers. In 2008, for example, the extension of payment terms went up to 60 days. That was supposed to be a temporary issue. However, 60-day payment terms just became the industry standard. We've seen companies already start to extend payment times beyond this, as far out as 120 days. And unfortunately, we face the real fact that this could become the industry standard moving forward. So if companies need to wait up for additional payment periods, we've got to make sure that everyone is managing cash flow effectively. So we have a couple of strategies here that we think can help optimize your cash flow if you're not already taking advantage of them. Let's start with the lease versus buy. So rather than buying new equipment, you can take advantage of the low interest rates that we're currently seeing to lease products and preserve capital. Secondly, if you're currently paying your workers every 2 weeks, you could consider a shift to a bi-monthly payment schedule. What that does is it'll allow your company to stabilize its cash flow and make those predictable payments across 24 cycles instead of 26. Another option you have here is you could explore electronic payments that will allow you to pay expenses on the very last possible day. Corporate credit cards can also offer an additional 3 weeks of payment, which can help to stabilize your cash flow. Fourth, you want to be sure to regularly audit your accounts receivable to ensure that all of your invoices have been sent and received. With the help of Open Invoice, obviously, this should be pretty straightforward, but it is something that occasionally can be overlooked. Finally, the last point here is financing. That's something that we're going to spend the majority of this webinar discussing. We'll discuss ways in which you can bridge cash flow gaps that can't be remedied by the previously mentioned procedural or strategic changes. So the way we have it broken out here is traditional and alternative. When it comes to financing your business, a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work. We all know that. You might not want to give up a portion of your company to an outside investor in the form of equity. And we all know that banks have been and typically are very slow and don't approve everyone who applies for a line of credit or a term loan. So what this brings us to is an alternative way that you can finance your business that you already have access to, but you may not know it, and that's AR financing or invoice factoring. If you're the owner of the business or you're managing accounts receivable for your company, you've got enough on your plate. Chasing payments does not represent the best management of your time. The thing that many people don't know, however, is that they can get instant cash flow in exchange for their outstanding customer invoices. With invoice factoring, you simply sell unpaid invoices to a factoring company for the money you need, typically at a discount. So with our Open Invoice Net Zero solution, you can receive payment for your invoices within 24 hours. Unfortunately, not every company takes advantage of the benefits of invoice factoring. According to Intuit, roughly 1/3 of American small businesses report that they have at least $20,000 in unpaid invoices, and the average amount outstanding in receivables for a small U.S. business is almost $54,000, according to the same report. So the impact is very real. Many folks have a lot of dollars just sitting out there waiting to get paid and have not taken advantage of something like invoice financing to boost their cash flow. Diving a little bit deeper into invoice factoring, just to restate it, invoice factoring is a way for businesses to fund their cash flow by selling invoices to a third party at a discount. With our products, you'll receive anywhere from 94 to 98% of the value of the invoice, and you can do that within 24 hours. One of the great things about the program that we have set up for you is that you can truly fund and forget it. Fund-Through collects payment directly from your customer, so there's no worry about you having to receive funds and make payment to Fund-Through. Once you fund the invoice, you can go on managing your business. Factoring has been around for thousands of years, and it's very common in industries like oil and gas, where the buyers are large and have the power to dictate their own payment terms. Given the current economic situation we found ourselves in, we're already seeing the buyers extend payment terms, not just in oil and gas, but in other industries, and I would expect that trend to continue. We've seen 30-day invoice terms turn into 90-day invoice terms, and like I mentioned earlier, we've seen one extreme case where a buyer has pushed payment terms to 120 days. And I don't know about you, but if in this climate, I did some work, provided a service, and didn't get paid on it for 4 months, I would be pretty upset about that. So we have a way to solve for that. So who is Fund-Through? And obviously, you know, Open Invoice, but what are we doing together to make sure that you guys can take your cash flow into your own hands? I mentioned that that factoring has been around for thousands of years. At Fund-Through, we like to say that we've brought it into the 21st century. Our online invoice funding platform leverages technology at every corner, anywhere we could implement it, cutting down what's typically a multi-week underwriting process for a traditional factoring company into a process that can get you funded within a single day. We know that speed is super valuable for you guys. But not only is it fast, but you have visibility into exactly where you are in the process and where you stand once it's completed, all the way down to the single invoice level. You're not sending us or faxing us an application and hoping to hear back in the next 6 weeks. Since our founding in 2014, we funded over $400 million in invoices to businesses across the US and Canada, including over 100 suppliers that use Workbench, which is formerly known as Cortex. In 2017, we launched a similar net zero offering with the Cortex supplier base and have become a valuable tool for those suppliers to manage their cash flow as well. When Drilling Info, now Enverus, acquired Cortex in 2019, we had already established ourselves as a valuable tool, and we now have the privilege of offering not only our products to the Cortex supplier base, but also to the Open Invoice suppliers as well. We launched with Open Invoice Net Zero in September 2019, and since that date, we've had over 750 suppliers sign up for the service. So we're super excited about where we're heading with this program. So what exactly is this Net Zero product? By and large, I just like to think that it can give someone in your position peace of mind. There's no more waiting around for 30, 60, or 90 days for payment. We've done it in a way that is very convenient for you to use. So we've built the Open Invoice Net Zero product specifically for suppliers on this network and integrated it directly into your workflow. If you haven't noticed the Pay Me Now or the Get Paid Now buttons on the submitted and approved invoices, or at the navigation bar at the top of your screen, keep an eye out. I'm sure you'll see it now having come through this webinar. We've invested a lot of time and effort into making the product simple and easy to use. So there's no need for you to go to another web page, open a new window, to download a new application. We built the product right into your workflow to make it all of that much easier to use and just to manage in general. Unlike traditional factoring companies, we made it very flexible. You can select a single invoice to fund. We know cash flow needs ebb and flow, so we decided we needed to build a product that suits that. It gives you the ability to control what you fund and when you fund it. Best of all, I think signing up is completely free, and you don't pay a thing unless you're funding invoices. So if you're in a position where you think you need a safety net, for example, you can sign up, have this set up, ready to go, and when you need it, we're here for you. If you don't, then we're silently in the background. With our direct connection to Open Invoice, we can get you signed up super quickly, as I mentioned. You can see here on the screen, this is an example of what it looks like when you want to fund invoices from the invoice level in your Open Invoice platform. So you can be reviewing your invoices, click the Get Paid Now button or the Pay Me Now button. A window pops up. It shows all of your eligible invoices and allows you to review them, select which ones you would like to fund. It's as simple as that. So as we already stated, Open Invoice Mentor fits seamlessly into your AR management workflow. We're there when you need us and visible in the background when you don't. Once you've created an account and decided to factor one or more invoices, we do a quick credit review of your customer, meaning your buyer, and we assign a price for that invoice that's typically between 2% and 6%, depending on the credit profile of your customer and the term of the invoice. If you decide to move forward, we issue an NOA or a notice of assignment to your customer. This informs them that you would be partnering with FundThrough to manage your accounts receivables and request that they change their direction of payment to FundThrough. What this does is it ensures that when funded invoices are paid by your customer, that payment goes directly to FundThrough, which is truly allowing you to fund and forget because you don't have to come to FundThrough and make that payment. We've already been paid. There's no more fees for us to take out. There's nothing that needs to be written back to you. For any invoices that you do not factor with net zero, that NOA is still in place, so payments will still go to FundThrough, but those payments are passed through along to you same day with no fees, and the same goes for checks. We'll pass those through same day, no fees. So just a high-level product summary table here. The onboarding process is super fast and straightforward. You simply click on one of the buttons that we place throughout your workflow and follow all the prompts. All in all, it should take about 5 minutes to get you on board. Once you decide you'd like to begin factoring invoices, the time to get a new customer set up and ready to fund typically takes about 1 to 2 days while we do our due diligence and get that NOA set up. After that, each funding is typically processed within about 24 hours. In many cases, we can get those out same day as well. As discussed, we aim to build a product that fits directly within your workflow and as simple as possible to use. Your Open invoices will appear on the platform automatically, and any invoices from other customers or to other customers rather that are not on the Open Invoice network can also be funded through this platform. You just have to load them up into the system, and we'll walk through an example of what that looks like here in a moment. This one is pretty straightforward. You only pay for when you use net zero. There's no other fees associated with the service. And when it comes to credit, the credit is based primarily on your buyer, meaning the person who you're selling to. We use a combination of their creditworthiness and the specific terms of the invoice that you've issued them to determine a price. The price is always shared with you before you fund, so you always know how much you're paying. We will never fund an invoice for you and surprise you with how much it costs after the fact. You're 100% in the loop on that. And then finally, who pays? As we mentioned, the beauty of factoring in that NOA means that the buyer pays FundThrough directly and nothing else is required of you. If you don't choose if you do not choose to factor an invoice, we'll pass that on to you same day. So why choose net zero over another factoring company? As you'll see shortly, the process is super quick to get set up and get funding. Traditional invoice factoring companies can take weeks just to give you a decision on whether or not they can work with you. And keep in mind, the answer can still be no at the end of that underwriting period of however many weeks. We give you clear responses quickly, and there's no run around waiting for a response from the FundThrough team. As a result of the long underwriting process that those traditional invoice factoring companies employ, they usually will only work with clients that have a large amount of AR outstanding. And even then, they require that the supplier factors all or some minimum amount of their receivables with them. Meaning, if you if you're issuing $100,000 of invoices in a month, they require that you factor all of that $100,000 of invoices, regardless of whether you need the cash infusion or you need the cash faster or not. Their contracts are typically 12 to 18 months and have outrageous penalty fees if you want to get out of the contract early in most cases. We don't require that you sign a contract. We are 100% flexible in that you can sign up and use us however you need us. When that's zero, like I mentioned, the only fee is the only fee that you pay is what you see on the specific invoice level. There's no early payment fee, late payment fee. There's no cost to keep the account open, no cost to close it. And a lot of the factoring companies out there are looking to make money off you from these hidden fees and costs, and we're just not one of them. We're very straightforward, as Tamara mentioned. We're trying to be as fair as possible with the suppliers that we work with. One of my favorite aspects of the Net Zero product is the fact that we give a 100% advance rate, meaning on day one, we take the fee from the invoice and give you the rest. So if you get calculated for a 2% fee, we'll give you 98% today. Traditional invoice factoring only gives you a percentage of the funds up front, and then uses that bit that they've held back to calculate the fee, remove that fee, and then remit to you the difference once they're paid. That's typically between 70 and 80% they'll give you. So they'll give you 70% on day one, and then on day 90 or whenever they get paid by your buyer, they calculate their fee, and then they would then pass those funds back to you. With that style of factoring, you never really know your fee until it's all over. If your customer pays late, for example, the extra fees that are incurred will come out of your pocket because we have the transaction history. When you connect your Open Invoice Net Zero account to fund through, we can calculate a fair and accurate fee up front, allowing you to get the most out of your funding on day one. So now that we've run through the various features and benefits of the product, I just want to take some time to see it in action. We've done some live demos in the past, and as some of you might know, those can go awry sometimes. So what I've done is I've got some screen recordings here of some key moments that I think really drive home the beauty of the product we've built, and it'll show you just how easy it is to get paid faster all within your current workflow. I'll give you a heads up, it's gonna loop and it's gonna happen indefinitely, right? So don't try to catch everything on the first one because it does move pretty quick. So this is the workflow you would see when you are going to enable and create your account with Net Zero. So you saw there, it's entering through, I'll wait for it to get through. This is where it's just establishing the connection to fund through and passing over a lot of the data that we'll use to make the decision. Set a password. And do that. So you'll see that was the invoice search screen. Now you have your invoices. You're in a specific invoice now. You'll notice that button, Pay Me Now. You click that. You don't have to navigate away from this window. It pops up a screen, gives you a little bit more information, and asks if you would like to enable. Right there, it'll ask if you have signing authority or not. If you do have signing authority, you can continue through like this. If you don't, it will prompt you to give us a little bit more information. And what we'll do is we'll reach out to you typically within 1 business day to learn a little bit more about your business and get you set up and make sure that we're able to move the account forward. This second example that I'm going to show you is funding a buyer for the first time. So that means you could have been signed up, you could have funded other invoices, but this is going to be the first invoice you send to first invoice you factor from one of your clients. You'll see we're entering from the same screen. We're going into an invoice. We're going to click the button. You'll see here we went straight into it because you're already logged in. You can see the net advance you would receive on that invoice. In this example, we're uploading an invoice because it's not an Open Invoice originated invoice. It's one from outside of that network. And this notice here says effectively, hey, we see this is the first time you funded for this buyer. We're going to now need to set up an NOA. We'll have someone reach out to you. We like to reach out to you at this stage to make sure that you're 100% on board with the NOA. You understand what it is. You understand the process. You're super comfortable with it. We have an NOA template that's ready to go and has historically been well received by buyers. But sometimes clients like to enter a custom message for their buyer or reach out to them directly. So we're happy to accommodate that type of preference. And moving on to the last little bit we have for you. This is funding an invoice to someone who you've already set up on the system. So this is going to be real quick. You're not going to have to issue an NOA. It's just clicking in, selecting the invoice, clicking fund, and ready to go. So you'll see here, you'll go from the invoice search page to your invoice, and you can enter this from a number of different places, but this one's specifically going through the invoice. You'll select the Pay Me Now. Because you're logged in and you selected that invoice, it goes straight to it, shows you the fee, shows you the advance rate. For this one, it's about 4%. You'll upload the invoice if it's not an open invoice, and then boom, it's funded. You should see the accounts, the funds in your account within 1 business day. So, if you're like my colleague here in this recording, who is already logged in, you know which invoice you want to fund, and you get straight to it. The whole process right there that you just watched took about 20 seconds from beginning to end. They talk about fast. Now he might be a bit faster than most, but the point should not still be lost. This product puts the power back in your hands to determine when you get paid. You could need the cash to make payroll, purchase materials, or give you and your company the confidence to bid for larger contracts with buyers who will likely have longer than average payment terms. Open Invoice Net Zero can be that safety net. It can also be the tool that pushes your business growth to the next level. So regardless of whether you're the owner of the company or you're an AR clerk trying to learn more about the different tools that Open Invoice has to offer, if this sounds interesting to you, we would love to speak with you more. We'd love to get you signed up, love to walk you through what we could do for you and your accounts receivable, and love to do so as soon as possible. How do you get started? I've mentioned, and you've seen a couple of examples, we've placed buttons strategically throughout the workflow. This top left button here is the Get Paid Faster button that's in the navigation bar of your Open Invoice dashboard. So that should be kind of omnipresent wherever you are. And then the other example here is the one you just saw a couple of videos of, and that's the Pay Me Now button that's on the specific invoice level. If you click either of those, for the first time, it will prompt you to go through a sign up. And if you have already signed up, it will either log you straight in or ask you to log in and go straight to your invoices to see which ones you would like to fund. Alternatively, if you'd like, you can go to our website here. I've included the link above. You can create an account there. You can learn more about Fund Through. You can reach out to us directly with the phone number on the screen that is after this one. But by and large, we've tried to give you as many ways as possible to jump in. If you'd like to learn more, we'd be happy to help. So that is the conclusion of my slides. I think we've set up some FAQs. Is that right, Susie?
Yes. Got a few commonly asked questions here for you. So if my buyer doesn't accept your NOA, what happens next?
Yeah, we do get that occasionally. And from time to time, buyers do refuse NOAs from factoring companies, and they can do so for any number of reasons. For example, fraud prevention, or they might have policies in place that require them to pay those who did the work directly, meaning they can't interject a third party in that workflow. If your buyer maintains that they would not like to redirect payment, unfortunately, we won't be able to fund their invoices because our process is one that requires buyer cooperation to manage our risk. That's important to us, but most importantly, we don't want to jeopardize your relationship with your customer. The good news is we can always fund invoices that you have outstanding to other customers and buyers in the event that you do have a buyer that does not want to cooperate with an NOA.
Okay, our next question is, what is the interest rate? So for example, if a buyer traditionally takes 90 days to pay, what would I be charged on a $1,500 invoice?
Okay, got it. So the way fees work is a bit different than what you would see with a traditional loan or a line of credit or a credit card even. We don't charge interest per se. It's more like a discount on the invoice. So it's going to be a flat fee percentage. We send you most of what you would get paid if you had waited, but we take a small fee off the top to compensate for that time. So when your invoice is paid by the buyer, the payment comes to us and you don't have anything additional to do. The discount is a flat fee based on a few things. We look at, one, the amount of time it takes to have that invoice paid, meaning the term. Is it a 30? Is it a 60? Is it a 90-day invoice? Second, we look at the buyer themselves and determine, how risky we think they are. Or do we really believe that they will pay? If so, we do a couple of extra due diligence checks there. And then we also look at the volume you're looking to fund. The typical fees, as we mentioned, range anywhere from 2% for short terms to a reputable buyer, up to 6% for longer terms to smaller buyers. So for like a $1,500 invoice was the example, where we expect to see payment in 90 days or so, I'd expect you pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $80.
Okay, next question. Do you only fund approved invoices?
Good question. Through our experience in reviewing years of transaction history with our models, we understand that in the vast majority of cases, submitted invoices are approved at a very high rate. And as a result, we do fund submitted invoices. If for some reason that invoice does not become approved or does not get paid, we can work with you directly to resolve that concern.
Okay, can we use Open Invoice for previously created invoices?
Yep, absolutely. So when you create your account, it will automatically import all submitted and approved invoices that you have. So if it's day 89 of a 90-day invoice, it will pop up and you will have the option to fund it. I'm not saying you should, it's a single day, but you have the option if need be. The only restriction that we have is that the invoice must have not already been paid, meaning not in a paid status. What's convenient for you, though, is that in your dashboard and on the specific invoices, you'll only see Pay Me Now. If it's in the submitted or approved state, it won't populate otherwise. For example, if it's in paid or draft or anything else. So.
Okay. And what if my buyer is always late to pay invoices?
Basically, when we set pricing for a given payor, we typically look at the buyer's terms with you, but we also look at the data that we get when you connect your Open Invoice account, and we look at your payment history between each other. The main thing we look for is that the payment patterns are consistent, and we use the actual payment timeframes to set pricing. And if there need to be changed later on, then we can adjust it. But in short, if your buyer pays late, then we can probably work with that. But the price to advance funding will probably be a bit higher because of the time we expect that invoice to be outstanding. Like, for example, if it's a 30-day invoice and the data says that we typically see payment in 45, it would be more expensive than a 30-day invoice because it really is a 45-day based on the data. One thing to be cautious about, though, is that if the buyer is consistently like doubling or tripling their payment terms, it could be a sign that the buyer themselves are struggling from a cash flow perspective. So in those cases, we do look at the buyer's credit health with more detail, and we may not fund invoices to them if we think there's a strong risk that they won't pay the invoices at all. All in all, I think that the best path forward would be for us to work together. You create an Open Invoice account, give us a shout, and we can look at this case by case and figure out what's the best way we can help you.
All right, perfect. Well, that concludes our questions. Andrew, do you want to show them where they can get more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to contact us, this Open Invoice at fundthrough.com inquiry email will go to both my sales team and myself, and that line will go directly to one of our customer support folks who can answer any questions you might have and walk you through what that application process would look like. Or once you're approved or connected, rather, we can talk through your specific invoices and what we can do for you. And then these Open Invoice contacts down here, if you have any questions about the product itself or just questions in general for the Enverus team.
All right, perfect. Well, everybody, thank you so much. That concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that you all stay safe and well. And please reach out to us to get more information if you're interested in participating in the program. We really appreciate you attending, and we hope to talk with you again soon. So thanks for joining. Have a great day.